I dealt with before on this issue.
Many I don't want to say.
Some of it wasn't all good.
Well, it is 6 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order, and if we could all please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonnie and Ben.
The Ben and Bonnie Show. I'm going to do the roll for the Grand Traverse County Commissioners and the tribe, and Ben is going to do the roll for the City Commissioners. Commissioner Klaus.
Here.
Crawford. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Kropa.
Here.
Lathrop.
Here.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Max Bauer.
Here.
Tom Showman.
Montpee.
Mark Wilson.
Montpee.
Good evening, Commissioner Carruthers.
Here.
Commissioner Easterday. Commissioner Howe. Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Boudros.
Here.
And Mayor Estes.
Here.
Thank you.
At this time on our agenda is our first public comment. This is this is a county commission meeting called by the county commission, and therefore we will be following the Grand Traverse County Board rules for public comment, and they will be read by our county clerk, Bonnie Shealy.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. A, any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. B, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairman shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. The city clerk and I would appreciate it if you could print your name on this sheet, because some of you have very unique spelled names, and maybe line up so that we can go faster during the public comment. Thank you.
All right, at this time I will open the floor to public comment. John? Matt? Get behind John.
And you could probably go out that door and come through this door and line up.
My name is John Nelson, 4022 Inklachee Crest Commons. I'd like to briefly discuss two issues having some bearing on your discussion on the Boardman River Dam's removal and river restoration this evening. Number one, there seems to be a perception out there by some in our community that the process has been somehow less than transparent, with not all the information being readily shared or available. May I remind you that in December 2008, the Boardman River Dams Committee and the implementation team presented to the city and the county recommendations for alternative futures for the Boardman River dams. The three recommended proposals arose from some 81 possible scenarios studied for 3 years by the Boardman River Dams Committee. One recommendation was to repair and retain all 4 dams. I repeat, one recommendation was to repair and retain all 4 dams. The second recommendation was to modify Union Street Dam and remove the other 3. The third was a hybrid of the first 2. All were accompanied by detailed rationale, including costs and benefits. Based on those recommendations, the county board voted in April of 2009 by a vote of 6-2 to move forward with a recommendation to remove 3 dams and modify Union. Commissioner Max Bauer and Commissioner Wheelock were in the majority in that vote. Based on that vote, much money, time, and energy has been spent to implement that choice. The Watershed Center obtained some $600,000 for sediment management. The IT and CRA obtained and spent upwards of $8 million to manage the removal of the Brown Bridge Dam. The Road Commission has obtained some $3 million to replace the Cass Road Bridge, and another $700,000 plus to cover the county's obligation for Cass Road. The second issue concerns river restoration. River restoration primarily deals with sediment management. Nutrients and sediments are identified in the Grand Traverse Bay Watershed Protection Plan as the primary threats to water quality in our watershed. Managing sediment and dam removal are integral and cannot be done responsibly without the other. And I read from the final project report to the U.S. EPA. Sediment management was critical in the Brown Bridge removal during the dam removal process in order to protect aquatic habitat and prevent sediment from migrating downstream. During the dam removal process, approximately 260,000 cubic yards, 390,000 tons of sediment was removed to form the new river channel. Thank you. Can I do this afterwards, or should I write my name on here?
I got you.
Okay.
You have a weird name, though.
Matt, before you speak, would you write your name down for our county and city clerks, your last name, just so they have the spelling?
Okay, after I get done?
Now or after, it's up to
Okay.
you.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address something that's been near and dear to many people in the area, especially those that live downstream. I have a set of suggestions for you to consider. First off, stop the dam removal process, end the IT, renegotiate or cancel any relevant contracts made, because many of those contracts were made with faulty information. Also, I would suggest that you avoid any federal financing should you decide not to consider the first two suggestions. Money taken from one pocket, whether it be locally or federally, it doesn't make any difference. Taxpayers pay it in the end. And I think it was Everett Dirksen, Senator Everett Dirksen, that once said $1 million here and $1 million there. Pretty soon we're talking about real money. If there is a dam that could be used, I've suggested this in the past, and I did it 3 years ago, is that put it into operation, but don't let county or city run it, but it could be managed by them through an outside agency. Any profits could be applied to the residents of the county and the city for reduction in their electric bills. Also, well, that's probably hitting enough of it right now, but I just wanted to also wish you all an unhappy anniversary, commissioners. Thank you.
Hi, Becky Ewing, 531 Randolph Street, and I'm here representing Rotary Charities of Traverse City. Our organization has a longstanding commitment to the Boardman River, which dates back to 1923 when we purchased property in the Boardman River Valley for use as a kids camp. As many of you know, our financial resources come from oil and gas discovered on that property, which have allowed us to invest over $54 million in our region since the late 1970s. So we take stewardship of our financial resources, our properties, and the watershed very seriously. To date, we've supported the Boardman River Dams project to the tune of $400,000, and are here to offer further support by bringing financial resources, technical assistance, and fund development in a collaborative effort to coordinate implementation of the Boardman River Prosperity Plan. The first priority that's been identified by a group of agencies and local units of government is the completion of Boardman and Sabin Dam removals and modification of Union Street. We believe a solid commitment of local government funding for the removal and restoration project can be leveraged many times over and used to attract substantial public and private investments in the watershed. Investments that will result not only in restoration of a critical resource, but significant economic development for our region. It seems the questions we should be asking here tonight are twofold. What does the Army Corps EPA investment make possible for a restored river? And perhaps more importantly, what does a restored river make possible for our community and our region? So we urge you to join with the Grand Traverse Band and make a financial commitment to this project. Thank you.
Jason Gilman, 933 Avenue D, East Bay Township member, resident. Couple of things to talk to the comments made prior. If we're talking about sediment, how about the sediment in the 13-mile stretch below the Brown Bridge Dam after the accident 3 years ago yesterday? I recall watching the floodwaters rise and kind of monitoring it with the county employees at that time when I was a county commissioner. To the Rotary's support and spending of several $100,000 of Rotary money towards this. Rotary is a 501c3. This is a very divisive issue in the community. And at the time that the decision was made, it was better than 50% of the community that wanted to keep the dams. I don't see how it's a good place for the Rotary to be involved in those politics. But I'd like to read something, and I'll just make this brief, and then I'll get out of the way and let you guys go about your business. The implementation team has members who are paid or compensated to spend their time planning the removal of the dams. That includes a lot of people in here. There are a lot of people in here who have a paycheck drawn from going forward with this process. Okay, they have a lot at stake here, but it's very self-serving. The Grand Traverse Band pays someone to promote the removal of the dams. They're here now. The DNR, DEQ, EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers get paid to find money for the removal of our dams. The Trout Unlimited personnel who granted $1 million to get a reward, they get a reward for removing our dams to pursue their goal of a cold water trout stream that meets their needs. The deconstruction crews are paid to remove the dams. The former administrators, Dennis Alloy and Ben Bifos, were both paid salaries while shepherding the dam removal through. Who's paying for dam removal? The home and the property owners have had their environment changed around them because they could not keep up with the paid staffers working against their interests. The home and property owners who've had to seek legal assistance because warnings of flooding to this board were not heeded prior to the removal of the Brown Bridge Dam. The taxpayers in the region who for the first time in several generations are facing higher flood insurance premiums because the plains have expanded and become higher risk as flood control infrastructure is removed. All taxpayers through deficit spending, and now that some of that money through an agency, the EPA, which has no constitutional basis to exist. The immediate financial cost of deciding the fate of the dams was primary when the decisions were made, long before the first drawdowns began. Public sentiment weight was to keep the dams, and prescient advisories were issued for all the mishaps that have since occurred in that time. Will you once again accept a deal with the devil to satisfy a current perceived saving? Thank you.
Norbert Tutlis, 4565 Buckhorn Drive, Traverse City, Michigan. I hope my voice doesn't start breaking. Every time I get up here, I get very passionate about the subject of a river reborn, of cold water fishery habitat. Understand this, as long as there are channels and ducts that go under roads, as long as Union Street Dam is in place, it's not a river reborn, and it hasn't died. It's a very viable river. The Corps of Engineers is going to stand up here and tell you they did an environmental assessment, found no significant impacts if the dams are removed, but all you have to do is go back and look at Brown Bridge Dam, and you know that significant impacts are potential. And they're using the same flawed information that AMTEC and EMEC and OMAC and AMAC used back in 2008 to convince us that no significant impacts if the dam is removed. Now you can say, well, it was an accident. Well, it was an accident, but where'd the water come from? Where the water is in the river. And it flooded, and it flooded horribly. And it could and will again. You know, we were told dams aren't flood control devices. They're flow. But they are flood control devices, and nobody's going to convince me otherwise. So the EPA backs up the Army Corps of Engineers, and their talk is modification of the Union Street Dam as a part of a program to restore fisheries and aquatic habitat on the Boardman River and make it a highly regarded cold water trout stream. It already is. I got news for you. The ponds warm the water and warm the river. The ponds are gone. The river is flowing through there. It's free. It's not impounded. It's not gaining temperature. So whatever fisheries that Brown Bridge Dam failure didn't kill are not, as you're going to hear, increasing because there's no measurable, quantifiable numbers available to tell you how many more there are. They're not diversifying. They're not going to flow upstream. They're going to be trapped, transferred upstream. That means they're coming out of the bay, which is contaminated, and they're going to go upstream, which is sort of contaminated. The river is flowing so fast that no reasonable trout fisherman is going to get in it, I promise you. They'll fish from a bridge, but it's flowing too fast. I've been on it too much. If somebody in here raises their hand that they've been in the Boardman River, up above Brown Bridge, and fished, I'm going to sit down right now. And if they don't, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Got a handheld microphone. Is this easier? Are you able to put up volume? I have no one of these before. My name is Dave Downer. I live at 1965 River Road West, Traverse City, Michigan. I'm a former city resident, lifelong Grand Traverse County resident, and I've lived on the Boardman for about 40 years. I started taking pictures of the river from Chuck's Landing down to where the dam used to be, starting right after the first time it washed out. I've done it every spring and every fall, and this was again this spring around Mother's Day. It's just overwhelming physical evidence of the erosion that's going on. That's clay, most of it. That's sand. That's clay. That's clay. That's sand. That's black clay-based muck. There's an example where some wood has helped some. My concern is that this has destroyed about 10 miles of blue ribbon trout stream. And my biggest concern, I think, is first, why would anyone allow these people to do another dam removal when they haven't finished this one? My other real big concern is this has never been about restoring the Boardman River to a more natural state. That is just totally misleading. This is about converting the Boardman River into a salmon and steelhead fishery and fish hatchery to promote steelhead and salmon fishing and to promote the commercial fishing industry in this region. And if that's what people want, and that's what they want to do to the river, then that's fine. But to continue to lead the public to believe that this is a restoration project is just really, really disingenuous. I guess that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and also tell you how much I admire you for conducting democratic government in such an open venue. It's messy, and I really admire you for doing it. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Chuck Korn. I live at 4111 Summerhill Road, Traverse City, Michigan, 49684. I wasn't going to speak, but I do feel the need to address the issue of transparency. In January of 2004, Kelly Thayer from the MLUI advised people that the Army Corps of Engineers was willing to include a bridge in this project as part of the match. Several weeks before the previous board approved a contract to build that bridge. Andy Knott from the watershed stood here and carefully explained how MDOT had designed this to be a match for the Army Corps' participation. Shortly thereafter, it was very quietly announced that it never was a match. I contacted Carl Platz from the Army Corps, and he said at the time that first notice was written, nobody from the Army Corps had been contacted. They didn't get involved until years later, and it never was. So it not only was not transparent, it was misleading. Poor decisions are based on poor information. When you give information that's incorrect to people who are trying to do the right thing, whether it's for a good reason or not, it's not right. It is not right. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Thank you very much. At this time, I will turn it over to our presenters. Now, I would like the City Commission and the Tribal Council members and the County Board to know that we are going to have a brief presentation. I have asked for the presentation to be brief, primarily because I view this as an opportunity for the City Commissioners, for the Tribal Council, and for the County Board to ask questions regarding the new proposal that I've been reading about in the paper, and other things that may be of concern to the city, the Tribal Council, and the Board of Commissioners. So with that, I will turn it over to our first presenter. Frank, did you want to start it off?
Yes, please.
And if you would introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Frank Deturi, Chairman of the Boardman River Dam Settlement Implementation Team. And I also work at the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians Natural Resource Department as an ecologist. On behalf of the IT and the entire community, thank you for convening this special meeting to discuss this vital and historic project. We're here tonight to present a brief status update along with information about a new major funding commitment that will help fulfill this community's decision to remove the 3 dams on the Boardman River and modify a 4th. We're keeping these presentations very brief to allow plenty of room for discussion. Our presenters include Kim Belke, Project Manager and Biologist for the Conservation Resource Alliance, and Carl Platz, Project Manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Detroit District. Also here are Jen Miller, representing the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Leary Program Manager, and members of the IT. And just quickly, any members of the IT here, I'd be happy if you stood up and just quickly introduced yourself.
Rick Westerall, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Heather Henninger, Fisheries Biologist, Department of Natural Resources.
Scott Heinzman, Fisheries Division. Jim Wolowski, Department of Environmental Quality. Steve Largent, the Grand Traverse Conservation District, ex officio.
Christine Richmond, Watershed Center.
Nate Winkler, Conservation Resource Center.
Dean Bott, Grand Traverse County.
City of Traverse City.
Marty Colburn, City of Traverse City.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Frank.
In the interest of hearing the information as clearly as possible, we ask that you allow Kim and Carl to walk through their slides without interruption, and we will happily take your questions after that. When you have finished all your questions, I will close with a final comment. Thank you, and Kim Belke will lead off.
Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you to Frank for continuing to be our IT chair and helping to get us to where we are today, along with his representation of the tribe. I know a lot of you have probably seen these initial slides, but I thought I'd just do a super quick recap of the project. So here's an overview of our 4 dam locations in the lower half of the Boardman River watershed. And again, the overall project is defined as removing 3 of the dams and modifying the last one in an effort to restore the river to a more natural, cold, free-flowing stream. And again, this is the largest dam removal in Michigan's history. The take-home from this slide is that our project team is a rather expansive, collaborative group of pretty major partners. We could easily add more partners to this slide if we were to include some of our main funders like the Fry and Olson Foundations, Great Lakes Fishery Trust, Rotary, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and so on. Our key goals include environmental benefits as well as removing outdated infrastructure. You know, we're looking at restoring over 4 miles of river, reconnecting the upper watershed to the Great Lakes, looking at restoring wetlands, upland adjacent habitat, and also passage for aquatic species. So where are we at today? We are in the design phase right now. $1,266,000 has been raised in federal, tribal, state, and foundation grants. This is 13 different commitments. Our design and permits for Cass Road Bridge are complete. Well, let me back up. Our design phase includes the consolidated design of 3 sites: Boardman Dam, Sabin Dam, and a road crossing. So where we're at today, the design and permits for Cass Road Bridge are complete. The design for Boardman Dam removal is 90% complete. The joint permit application for Boardman Dam is upcoming. And then the design for Sabin Dam removal is 30% complete and pending. AECom, formerly URS, is the design firm, and they have been doing this scope of work under 2 contracts, one with the county and one with the tribe. Just a quick bird's eye view of what these design plans are recommending. If we look at our Boardman Dam site, let's see here, we're going to be basically managing about 280,000 cubic yards of sediment that have accumulated over the last 100+ years behind this dam. We'll be restoring, daylighting 1 3/4 miles of river. I know this text is super hard to read in those boxes, but I thought ahead, and so I shaded them. First on the to-do list would be to build Cass Road Bridge. This has to happen first because it's going to be built where the original river once flowed, and we need somewhere to pump the water when the rest of the impoundment is dewatered. Next to do would be to go up to the upper impoundment where it's already dewatered and begin to recreate the river. The third item would be to construct a downstream channel by that core wall, earthen berm, and start drawing down the impoundment. Most of the impoundment will be drawn down through a siphoning system, again being pumped out. Once most of the impoundment is pumped out, they can then go to the area that's currently underwater and start building sand traps, managing that sediment, and recreating the river and its floodplain. The next item would be to go to where the spillway currently is and the bridge and start removing all of that infrastructure and grading out that intake channel as well. And last would be, again, to just go out through the whole area, making sure we have our floodplain wide enough and doing all the stream bank habitat work, seedings, and live plantings. So it's pretty comprehensive. For Sabin Dam, a similar scenario. They'll be managing 90,000 cubic yards of sediment and daylighting 1 mile of river. And again, it'll be a sequencing effort, first going into the upper channel, completing channel construction, then going down to where the water control structure is, drawing down the rest of the impoundment and removing the associated infrastructure. Doing sediment management throughout the impounded area that will no longer have water in it. And again, the fine-tuning of making sure we have our floodplain created, stream bank stabilization, and live plantings. What is next? The bridge, Cass Road Bridge, is scheduled for 2016 construction. MDOT has signed a contract with Davis Construction for $2,873,000. The engineer's estimate for that bridge was $2.9 million, so it was pleasant that the bid amount came in so close to what was projected. The Road Commission, Grand Traverse County Road Commission, is fulfilling the 5% local construction match needed for that MDOT grant, and the Road Commission is also fulfilling the staking and construction engineering costs for that as well. And I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that the project partners are appreciative of this key contribution to the project. Just a couple graphics of the bridge site. This photo was from a spring site visit. You can see the dam and where people currently cross the water. And what we'll expect to see, so the top photo there is the Beaver Pond area. I don't know if everyone is familiar with that. Looking upstream at Cass Road. This was actually where the initial Boardman Dam was built in 1894. The initial Boardman Dam was built. And so with the bridge project, that fill will be removed, and a bridge structure about 250-foot span will be constructed. It will sufficiently span the river, the floodplain, allow room for trail. We'll have 2 vehicle lanes and 8-foot wide shoulders. So just a snapshot of the grants invested to date. These numbers total about $13.3 million. And these items are really the primary components of the bridge, of the dam removal effort. And what I mean by primary, I mean the engineering, the construction, the basic project management needs. Brown Bridge dam removal in its entirety cost about $5.7 million. That was funded by 8 different major sources of funding. Again, tribal, state, federal, and private contributions. Between let me check my notes here. 2013 and 16, there's been about $674,000 in non-construction items, meaning basic project management, monitoring, communications. The design phase is fully funded, as I've noted, and that's $1.2 million. The bridge is going to be a $3.1 million project, including the match, plus some the engineering and staking. And then we do have, the IT members do have a number of grants that total $2.5 million that is set aside for the next phase of work. And that includes, I think, 8 different commitments. And those are all, we have tribal sources, federal, state, and also a private foundation, Great Lakes Fisheries Trust, has some funds in there. So with that, my part of the presentation is done, and I think Carl is up next. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Good evening.
Carl, before you begin, I just want to let everybody know this presentation was being worked on almost up until the meeting started, and your city clerk and our county clerk will be emailing this presentation to the tribal council members as well as the city commission and the county board members. So I just wanted to get that out. Please continue, Carl. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Again, I'm Carl Platts. I'm a project manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. And what I thought I would do is run through a quick overview of Corps involvement to date, discuss briefly the authorities that we operate under, talk a little bit about the project status, the current status, and the timelines. Hope to not repeat too much of what Kim has already shared. Certainly talk about project funding and the commitment, involvement of the owner and the non-federal interests in the project, and then have a brief discussion of our future directions, and then certainly, as we've already spoken about, we'll have time for general discussion and questions and answers. The Corps initially became involved in this project back in 2005 based on a request from both the city and the county. At that point in time, we were initially involved in preliminary screening of potential options. You'd already heard about all the different options that have been that were thrown out at one point in time, and looked at a number of conceptual designs for the entire project. And when I say entire project, at that point in time, the Corps had the scope of our project included the Brown Bridge portion of the project. Subsequently, once the owners and the non-federal interests decided to remove that dam on their own, that piece of the project, that component of the project was removed from our scope of work. And so we focused on, from there on looking at alternatives and restoration opportunities related to the Boardman Dam, the Sabin Dam, and the Union Street Dam. Our detailed feasibility study commenced in 2010 upon receipt of Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding. I'm going to refer to GLRI a lot, and so I don't want to say 4 words if I can just say 4 letters. So that's whenever I say GLRI, it's the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and again, that's where the majority of the funds that we've invested to date have emanated from. As we move through our study process, we completed that study, that detailed feasibility study, in 2014, and made a recommendation to remove the Boardman and Sabin dams and modify the Union Street Dam. Completing the entire project would provide the ecosystem benefits necessary to justify the cost of the overall project. And to this point, the Corps of Engineers has invested approximately $2 million in all the efforts over the last 10 years. You may wonder how the Corps gets involved in projects like this. We do have a number of authorities that we can operate under to plan, design, and construct ecosystem restoration initiatives. Several of these authorities are nationwide initiatives, nationwide authorities. The majority of the work that we're undertaking on this project, however, has been conducted under the Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration Authority, what we refer to as GLIFR. That is a regional authority and focuses on Great Lakes restoration projects. As I mentioned, the majority of the funding to date has been provided by the GLRI. The Boardman River, remains a top priority to the Corps and to the EPA as we carry out the GLRI. And although it'll be implemented in phases, work throughout the river has been and continues to be viewed as one large project under the GLRI. As I mentioned, we completed that detailed feasibility study, and we also prepared an environmental assessment in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act in 2014. Through the NEPA process, there was an extensive public review and comment period, and that ultimately resulted in a signing of the finding of no significant impact by our organization in July of 2015. As outlined in our study, the estimated cost of the entire project is estimated to be $15.2 million, and again, this includes the Boardman, Sabin, and Union Street components. Under the GLIFR authority, again, that Great Lakes Fishery and Ecosystem Restoration Authority, that does require a 65-35 cost share. The 35% non-federal match is an important piece of the overall authority. The non-federal cost under the scenario that I just outlined, the $15 million total project cost, resulted in about a $5.3 million local match requirement, again, to address Boardman, Sabin, and Union Street. It's understandably difficult for local entities to raise this amount of non-federal funding. We have a wide variety and a long list of projects that are underway and throughout the Great Lakes region, and I can assure you that this community is not the only one that struggles with raising the required cost share match. So given the priority of this project to both the EPA and the Corps, EPA has recently agreed to use a direct GLRI funding mechanism for a portion of the overall project. And so the way the remaining project is now proposed to be implemented would be in 2 remaining phases. The Boardman Dam component would use that $8 million of direct federal funding through GLRI. And then the second phase of the project would follow our GLIFR process and include Sabin Dam removal and Union Street components. What this does, obviously, it provides some upfront financial relief for the owners. It continues to utilize non-federal funds to leverage the federal investment in the overall project. That is very important to both the Corps and the EPA. It's that leveraging of the federal funds that is part of the beauty of expanding the amount of federal funds that's used on a project. Basically what that does is it ensures the entire project also is completed in a phased manner to achieve the desired ecological benefits. And under this scenario, federal contracts would be issued by the Corps of Engineers for the removal of the dams. Those contracts would be issued by the Corps and managed by the Corps of Engineers. So just to give you a quick summary, I think Kim mentioned some of this already, but the design of Boardman is about 90% complete. That design is expected to be completed yet this month. All required permits are expected to be in hand in the spring of 2016, which would lend itself to potential award of a construction contract late summer, early fall of 2016. The estimated cost of the Boardman Dam component is $8 million. As far as Sabin Dam is concerned, that design, again, as Kim mentioned, is about 30% complete. The final design for that could be expected to be complete next fall. The following spring, then, we could have all the required permits in hand, followed by construction contract award in the late summer, early fall of 2017. Following the GLIFR authority for the Sabin Dam component of the project at a 35% cost share, the estimated cost to complete the project is $2.7 million. So the federal share would be $1.75 million, and the non-federal share about $945,000.
Carl, just to clarify on that, the 2.7 is the remainder after the transfer of the fundraised amounts for the road and dam portion of the Boardman Dam removal. Wasn't there going to be a transfer of something like 2.5 or 2.7?
Commissioner Kropa, if you would speak into your microphone.
The $8 million from the Army Corps, or the EPA, would go to the $8 million total for the Boardman Dam project that you just showed on the previous slide.
That's correct.
But there's already a balance of funds that have been raised. I believe they're $2.5 million. And those would be transferred to Phase 3, the Sabin Dam, upon the receipt of the $8 million towards the Boardman Dam phase. Because $2.7 million is not the cost of the Sabin Dam removal. That's the remainder of the cost after the transfer. Where did the $2.5 million go that's already been fundraised for the Boardman Dam? Okay.
Yeah.
So but the cost that you had on your thing, Kim, if I can find it here.
Commissioner Kropa, if you could kind of hold your thoughts till the end of the presentation.
That's fine.
And then I'll let you go.
That particular line doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think I think what we should do, if I could suggest, is I've only got a couple slides left. We can continue. We can continue this. I've got a summary slide here at the end, which speaks to some of that. I don't personally want to speak for what the potential use of the money that's already been raised locally could be, but from the study that we prepared, the cost to complete the Sabin Dam is $2.7 million. And the cost share then breakdown under the GLIFR program is what you see on the slides. As far as Union Street Dam is concerned, really, at this point in time, we only have conceptual designs in place, and so dates for final design and permitting and construction contract award, those are all to be determined. But again, in our feasibility study, we estimated the cost to complete work at Union Street to be about $1.5 million, and then you can see the cost breakdown there, the non-federal 35% share being about $525,000. What I've tried to do on this slide here is summarize all this for you, okay, broken down by dam, and so you can see what the estimated total for each component of the remaining project is. And under the core process, under the utilizing the GLRI funding, what would be the expected federal and non-federal share to complete the project. You'll note there that the current investment of $2 million that the Corps has put into this project so far under the GLFR authority is a cost-shared amount, and so ultimately that results in just under $2.2 million of remaining non-federal investment. I'll leave that up there for just a second. I think I'm almost done. So where do we go from here? Well, under this process and under what I've laid out, the first thing we would need is for the owners of the dams to provide a letter of intent to complete the project. We would then execute an interagency agreement with EPA to provide those direct federal funds to remove the Boardman Dam. We would then work, and some of this would be happening concurrently. We would work to execute a local agreement with the owner to provide all the required real estate access and identify long-term operation and maintenance requirements, things like that for the Boardman Dam. And we would also work to prepare and execute a project partnership agreement under our GLFR authority for the Sabin and Union Street components of the project. So I'll end it there with the flag slide.
Okay.
So Frank, I guess I'll turn it back over to you.
So we've entered the question and answer segment of the presentation, and if you folks would like to submit any questions, we'll have the knowledgeable folks up here that can answer those questions, address them for you. And I'll moderate that.
Okay. Well, generally, Frank, that's my job, but but you can see commissioners probably raising their hands much faster than I, going back and forth. So go ahead.
Thank you.
The 2.5 million, where did Kim, I know Kim knows the answer to the question. Your slide went through and broke down the dollars. You had a 2.5 million that had already been raised for, as I call it, Phase 2, Part B, the road and the dam. I was under the impression that that could be transferred to Phase 3.
Phase 3 being Sabin Dam? Well, yes and no. You know, actually, we've been talking about what we would do with our grants if this option with the Corps is pursued. We have a few different opportunities. For starters, we could likely still utilize some of those grant funds during the Boardman Dam phase. The permitting still needs to be completed. Well, let me back up. The contracts between the tribe and AECOM and the county and AECOM, well, I'm not quite sure about the tribe, but I think they're almost fully spent. You know, those contracts took us up to the permit application for Boardman Dam. Now, if the Corps were to get involved, there might be some more engineering needs for that permitting process. So for the Boardman Dam phase, we might have more permitting costs that would be needed, that would be eligible to pay for with our grants. These numbers, I like to remind people, they're pre-bid numbers, right? These are the cost estimates for construction. So granted, they have contingency built into them, but it certainly doesn't hurt to hold on to some other funds until after the construction bidding process is complete, so we know where we're really at with cost. Some of those grant funds could possibly be used for design work for Sabin Dam. You know, that is a $325,000 task that AECom has identified.
And that's not included in $2.7 million?
It is included.
It is included.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Now, we would, you know, I've talked to some of our grant administrators to see if that was an option, and it is for some of those funds. And so I think we'd need to come to the table again. And then we would need to talk to the Corps more about, you know, if they were comfortable with us.
So if we accept the $8 million from the Corps,
Mm-hmm.
we don't necessarily get to keep the $2.5 million that we've already raised for the Boardman Dam segment.
Oh, we do. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are other opportunities to spend that money, I guess is what I'm saying.
Other opportunities means that those are costs, and where are those costs at? I mean, we're looking at a total, you know, the 13 million for the Boardman, or, well, that's all of it. The 8 million as we're discussing,
Mm-hmm.
the 2.7 million, the 1.5 million, and you add that all up, where does the 2.5 million go in there? Because if you add it all up and take the percentages...
Well, this is where it gets interesting, right? You know, so...
This is where I vote no. Whenever it gets interesting is where you
Well,
lose.
it's interesting in a good way.
I hope.
Yes.
Because it hasn't been up till this point.
We have
2.5 million doesn't
possibly
disappear.
quite a bit of money at hand here. So, you know, if we were to plug some of those funds into Sabin Design, that could in effect, and Carl, you jump up here and bug me if I'm overstepping my bounds. If we were to proceed, for example, with Sabin Design through the existing contracts, that could in effect lower the 35% cost share needed from...
Well, I think how I would phrase that is, you know, I'm aware that, you know, you have these outstanding grants, funding available to you. On my slide, I talked about the timeline for Sabin, okay? And I talked about being in a position to award a construction contract for that. Well, before I misspeak, let me make sure in the spring of 2017, or I'm sorry, award in the summer of 2017. If there are funds that are available and usable for the Sabin Dam, you know, I guess I would expect that, or, you know, it's a possibility that those funds could be used for the design piece of Sabin. And what that would ultimately do is, let's just, I'm going to throw out numbers just for the sake of ease, but let's say that was $500,000 for the design piece. The overall estimated cost to the of the core project then would be reduced to $2.2 million, and so your 35% cost share would be based on a $2.2 million number rather than a 2.7. So, you know, it would conceivably reduce your obligation for the Sabin Dam if the money that you already have in hand would be used for design of that project.
Well, I have a question. So basically, based on your numbers, and when you talk about, I understand these are all estimates.
Right.
So we have $8 million estimate for Boardman. That, and you're saying the EPA grant's going to, assuming the estimates come in correct, that's going to cover all of that, right?
It's certainly the expectation, yes.
That's the expectation, okay. And then Sabin, the $2.7 million estimate, that's dam removal, river restoration, permitting, design, the whole ball of wax. It's an estimate, but that's, all that has been taken into account.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the estimate for Sabin Dam only.
So that leaves us $950,000 as a non-federal share. And then Union Street Dam, same thing, again, $1.5 million estimate, and basically $1 million in federal money and $500,000 in non-federal. So to sort of wrap it up, what you're saying is we've got to come up with $1.5 million in a non-federal share to complete the project, assuming these estimates are correct. But we have $2.5 million that we've already raised. So the question is there any reason that that $2.5 million isn't used for the $1.5 million match estimated, or is there any part of that $2.5 million that isn't eligible to be used for the match because it's federal funds from another agency or whatever?
You just answered the question yourself. You know, when we refer to non-federal match, we are speaking of non-federal funding that did not emanate from a federal source.
Okay,
So
well, again, we're not the ones who've been sitting through all the meetings and talking about all the money. Who can answer the question of the $2.5 million we have right now, what portion of that cannot be used for the non-federal match? I mean, I realize it can be used for the project, but we can't count it for the non-federal match.
Yeah.
Who can answer that question?
I don't think any of it can be used directly as your local match.
None of it.
No. What it can do is pay for, perhaps, Saban design, but would then possibly bring down, your $945,000 requirement.
Because you've reduced the amount of money that the feds have to put in.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. Well, I would hope that when you send us all these, nice little pieces, electronically, that somebody would provide an accounting of the money of the $2.5 million and where it came from. Because my understanding is not, but we weren't given it, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, my whole packet for this meeting was only 3 pages.
Right.
So,
of the 2.5 million, essentially, we would have use of about 35% of that money towards the non-federal match, correct?
No, that is not correct.
Define local match.
Yes, non-federal match.
Under our GLIFR authority, as I mentioned, 35% of the project cost would be required to be a non-federal share, non-federal match. What that means is the funding would have to emanate from a non-federal source, state, local, governmental agency, nonprofit organizations providing donations to a project, et cetera. For instance, if the city or the county or any local unit of government received a GLRI grant, through a different process that they applied for, that money emanated from a federal source and could not then be used as the non-federal match for the core project.
So, Carl, as I understand you, so I'm hearing that a group like Rotary, like the Fry Foundation, Olson Foundation, that is considered local match.
Those are, we'd have to look at it, but on the surface, it sounds like those are locally generated funds that would be considered a part of the non-federal match, correct?
I, as a county commissioner, would greatly appreciate knowing the definition of local match.
Yep.
That's very important to me. I've got another question for you as well while you're standing there.
Sure.
You said that you are requiring for the $8 million a letter of intent from the owners of the dams. Are you including Union Street Dam in that letter of intent, or are you directing that request to the county?
Not directing that at any specific entity, honestly. I refer to owners and my understanding is that, and up till this point, we've received numerous letters of intent from the county as we've moved through our process. We have received letters of intent from the city as well, over the duration of our involvement in the project. The city and the county are not the only entities that could serve as the non-federal sponsor for the project. So under the GLIFR authority, we would be looking to whoever intends to serve as the non-federal sponsor for the letter of intent from that entity. And we have definitions I can provide to you. I don't want to try to, I don't have them recited to memory of who can, what type of entity can serve as a non-federal sponsor, but certainly counties, cities, states can serve.
For the $8 million, what, I want to be absolutely clear what you're asking for. Are you asking the county and the city, and you don't have to necessarily include the city, I understand that, but are you asking the county to agree to remove the Boardman Dam, remove Saban Dam for that $8 million, or are you requiring the county to do Boardman Dam, Saban Dam, and the city requirement to renovate, restore Union Street? What is the requirement?
We are looking for a letter of intent for continued participation in the project. I know that's a very general answer.
As a whole?
As a whole. Given the fact that, as I mentioned on an earlier slide, all we have are conceptual designs for Union Street, that's a little bit undefined at this point. So, again, a letter of intent is a letter of intent. You're not signing a contract at that point. You are providing your intention to participate in the project process. We like to work with non-federal sponsors throughout the country, certainly throughout our region here, in good faith, and would expect, that to be the case here as well.
Okay. Mr. Werner, then Commissioner Richardson.
Could you bring up the slide with the 3 bridges, and then there was a 4th line item, which was non-bridge?
Oh, yep.
It had different, yep, that one, thank you. So the current investment, and I didn't have time to read the fine print before, and maybe you can summarize, but
pretty good at putting fine print on it.
Is the 700,000 non-federal, is this something that's already has happened, or yes, we as a community are still on the hook for that 700,000?
Well, that's a very good question. The $2 million is the amount of money, amount of funding that the Corps of Engineers has invested into this project to date. Okay, so that $700,000 non-federal share of that is required to be a part of the overall non-federal cost share of the project. To date, we have not received any of that funding.
So the Corps feels like it is owed still?
Yeah, it's a requirement of the program to retroactively cost share the work that has been accomplished to date.
Okay, and then I guess my follow-up question, so that's included. I would take your 14.2 million, subtract out the 8 million to get 6.2 million, and then if that's 6.2 million, that's subject to this Gliffer approach. For round numbers, couldn't we subtract this 2.5 million that we're talking about from the 6.2? Whatever we get, and then take our 35% to at least get a round number of what is expected of our community?
Well, again, I would have to defer to the IT and county and city, whoever's responsible for usage of those federal grant monies. As I understand it, and the Corps of Engineers is not a granting agency, so I don't get involved with grants. But as I understand it, when you receive a grant, there are stipulations with that grant. They want it used for certain things. Okay, and so if part of that 2.5 million, if they received a grant that said, we want this used for this purpose, and that purpose was somehow related to Boardman only, then it could not be used.
Fair enough.
You'll see there, and I wrote this, I'm having a hard time reading it, but the item E, where I talk about the 2.17 may be further reduced via in-kind crediting, et cetera. That's really what I'm referring to there. There are potential ways to reduce that number through provision of in-kind services. We could, if there are funds available, like I mentioned, the design example, okay, that would reduce the scope of our remaining effort. If there are other portions of those of the Boardman, Sabin, Union Street components of the project that may be done directly with those funds, it could further reduce the scope of the project, thus further reducing the non-federal share. Does that make sense?
Commissioner Richardson.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say that, this is something I do, and I support the idea of doing this. I mean, this is a way forward. This is a project that I think needs to be completed. I think the community is behind it, despite some of the public comment we heard tonight. So what you're saying in a way is that 2.17 million is sort of the most money we'd have to come up with, but money in hand and money that we may be raising, hopefully that'll be easier now that, a big chunk of this liability is handled by the federal government, may make it easier to raise more money. That can all be reduced from that number, but yet that number is probably the worst case scenario of what the local units of government would have to put in.
I guess I would suggest that is our current estimate. I would hate to use the term worst-case scenario. I mean, you never know the nature of construction contracting. I think somebody already mentioned, but yes, at this point in time,
again, understanding
including contingencies that we've built into our estimates, that's the number that, as the Corps of Engineers looks at this, is estimating to be required.
Okay. Well, then what I would say is, I think we owe you, some gratitude for coming up with all this, but then going back to our local people. The CRA and the IT, we need to have some good accounting of where we are and how that money can be used and how much money we're going to have to come up with before I think either any of the three of us are ready to sign that letter of intent going forward. I mean, we have already signed letters of intent, but this is a big deal. We're going to say, okay, we're going to commit ourselves to completing the project, but that number's got to be the number that we're facing has to be a little harder than it is right now.
Ross, can I clarify a little bit?
Absolutely.
And Frank, speak into the microphone, please.
Sure. That costs of the future phase of this, and you mentioned a couple minutes ago that you understand the construction costs move around. They're not solid until you get design and bid numbers. So 30% design at Sabin is what reflect that's that number that's reflected there, that 2.7. The city component at Union Street Dam at 1.5. It's certainly our understanding, and through meetings with the city, that the city may want to integrate some urban infrastructure to go alongside with that. So that number is not solid either. But what these numbers represent, which is solid, is that there are $8 million coming with no local match requirements to a project, that there's also $3.1 million for a bridge construction, $2.5 million as part of the local fundraising effort, and many folks involved in continuous fundraising efforts, including the entire IT, which is us. It's Marty, it's the county, the city, the county, it's the band, it's all the folks in this room that have dedicated a lot of time to this project. And there is no one on this team that's looking to leave any piece of this project in the rearview mirror. The fundraising will continue. The Rotary has stepped up and has moved forward with a solid funding plan, but without local buy-in, that effort to bring funds in from outside this area without a local buy-in, 100% support, is lost.
Yeah, I think the important part in this screen is that with the best information we have right now, the burden to us on the IT team, which would include city and county officials and the tribe, was that we should expect something like $2.17 million that we have to come up with, whether we raise it, whether it comes out of our general funds or elsewhere. But we have to be accountable to find that much money if we proceed with this.
No, and I agree with Commissioner Richardson. We need some solid numbers other than this. We need to see, as far as I'm concerned, Grand Traverse County needs to see an accounting of what is considered a local match that has been raised to date and what is not. And, the city faces Union Street. We started this entire project jointly with the Grand Traverse Band, who, by the way, it should be noted that the Grand Traverse Band has been able to access funds that we ourselves could not access. So they have been partners in what has been done to date, and I think that should be noted. But I truly would like some solid numbers, a definition of what is local match, and really as close as you can come as to how much money needs to be raised to finish it.
As far as the numbers and the local match numbers, we can certainly provide you with those numbers by reviewing the grant the pieces of the grants and understanding where all those moving parts are, that is a number we can provide. As far as understanding the total cost of the project accurately at 30% design and feasibility level for Sabin and Union Street, those numbers are not carved in stone yet.
I hear you. Commissioner Wheelock and then Dr. Lathrop.
Having been involved in this project for 10
Commissioner Wheelock,
years.
your microphone, please.
Yeah, having been involved in this project for 10 years, and I don't know how many countless meetings, and there's a lot of people in this room that have sat through hundreds of hours of meetings that I wasn't at. So, I appreciate everyone's dedication to this project. I can't help but remember that this project started out even bigger than we're talking about tonight because of Brown Bridge in it. We had Brown Bridge that was, the dam itself was failing. We were having some leak issues. We had all kinds of issues there. With the funding that we've been able to raise, we've already removed Brown Bridge. That was a $5 million piece that we've already taken out of that before we started our discussion here tonight. I too want to see some real numbers as to what the local share, because all of these grants, I hate to say whether it's the Army Corps grants or whether it's the Fry Foundation, they all come with certain strings attached to them as to what you can use them for. And I think we all need to sit down and look at those numbers. I think the important thing to come out of this meeting tonight is at least a conceptual commitment by this group of individuals that we want to continue to move forward with this project. We got into this and we signed letters of intent a long time ago. We've changed some board members, we've changed different things, the community's changed, the economy's changed, all different kinds of things. But primarily, we need to make sure that there's still a commitment to complete this project for the betterment of our community. One of the concerns that I had when I was listening to Carl's presentation was the timeline. Because I've heard Mr. Cook tell us that the Road Commission is going to talk about building a bridge in 2017 and removing Boardman Dam, or building a bridge in 2016 and removing Boardman Dam in 2017, and then we were kind of seeing Sabin Dam in 2018, and I can't help but remember we have a consent agreement that says that we were going to have the dams out in December of 2012. So we're kind of caught in a timeline here. So I'd like to talk about where that's at.
The timeline, as I understand it through our meetings with the Corps and the engineering teams, has virtually not changed. So I think Carl talked about design in 2016, permitting, and beginning of bridge construction. That would include some pieces by the Road Commission, tree clearing in 2016, early 2016. The design is in place, the permit's in place, so there would be the bids actually in place and accepted, correct? The next step for bridge construction, as far as I understand, is tree clearing and construction. Permits are in place, bridge is ready to go, it's designed, it's been bid, and the number's in, and it's less than the amount of funds that are held currently by the Road Commission to complete that task. So 2016, I understood as being late 2016, bridge construction, followed by final design for Sabin, or continued design through Sabin, and removal during the 2017 year?
But Boardman will be removed in 2017 also, so are we anticipating that we will remove both Boardman and Sabin in 2017?
I'll have that. Let me jump in.
Sure.
Apologize if there's any thing that didn't clarify very clearly, but slide here for the Boardman Dam, we're talking about awarding a construction contract, as I mentioned, late summer, early fall of next year. Okay, as I understand it, the bridge will be constructed next year. Okay, that construction is going to start here as soon as, well, as Frank mentioned, they may start clearing trees this winter, but I believe early spring the bridge will be initiated. That project should be complete by the end of the summer 2016. If we award a contract around that same time, we don't want to have our contractor be in any conflict with the contractor that's building the bridge. So from a time perspective, it would seem to flow pretty seamlessly. And when we say we're going to award a contract, let's say we award a contract in early fall, that doesn't mean that the dam would be coming out in the fall. I think Kim had a slide there where she showed all the different components of the Boardman Dam Removal Construction Project, which would start with some restoration of the stream and sediment management type activities. And so under this scenario, if we award a contract late summer, early fall 2016, I would expect the majority of dam construction at Boardman to occur in the spring, summer of 2017. And it's during that spring, summer of 2017 that we would finish up the design of the Sabin Dam, okay, award a contract at the end of that, again, late summer, early fall 2017, and again, the majority of the dam removal construction piece of that would occur likely in 2018. Again, we all know a lot of it's contingent upon weather, all kinds of different things. And then, as far as Union Street's concerned, again, we don't really have a good schedule for that at this point in time. We won't have that until we finalize the design for that project. So, does that clarify and answer?
Yeah,
okay.
That's kind of where I had it in my head. It just, when we start talking about 2016 and 2017, then I'm looking at, are we taking both dams out in 2017?
No, I would not expect that to be the case.
Dr. Lathrop, you had your hand up.
I have a couple questions. When we say dam removal, I think it's been already addressed, but I want to make sure. You don't mean just dam removal, you also mean river restoration?
Yes, the proposal, that's a very good question, thank you. When we talk about dam removal, the dam removal contract includes river and channel restoration components. So
what about the
both upstream
old
and
buildings?
downstream.
The removal of those, who's paying for that?
At this point in time, at the Boardman Dam, we have included those in the cost for that activity in the $8 million GLRI direct funding estimate.
Okay. Another question I have is when we do get these numbers, whoever are going to give them just harder numbers, I realize they're just projections. I know that you're looking at a 30% design and you can't project past that, but I like to see it broken down into, we're looking at, you said $2.7 million that we have to pay. I'd like to know how much of that, quotes, worst case scenario, that the county has to pay, how much the city has to pay. Because when I'm looking at the county budget, I like to have a number. I don't want to sign a blank check. I like to have some type of number that is a ballpark figure that we might have to come up with, the county. So I like to see that in the breakout of the numbers.
If you want, my thought on that is, from the core perspective, again, we are looking at the non-federal sponsor to whoever that is, and whether it's city or county, city and county, how the local share is negotiated and coordinated among those entities, we don't get involved in that. We're just looking at the total number. So that I would suggest that would be something that this group would negotiate and figure out what those numbers are.
Okay, so you're not the guy answering the question, so I'm just going to put it out there. I want some solid numbers, as solid as we can get. I don't think that my constituents want me to sign a blank check. So.
Okay, Commissioner Klaus, Commissioner Crawford, and then Commissioner Kropa. I'll get it out.
Frank, this question.
And please remember to speak into your microphones, or if you want to look at, just borrow Carol's there.
I'm going to go upstream a ways. The Brown Bridge Dam, is that project complete? is that 100% complete with the river restoration on that project?
If you ask the team members, I think they would say that restoration activities continue because the team, the Conservation District, the folks that are in this audience that continue to raise money, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the USDA, the funds brought in from a myriad of funding pieces are still being used. So are the objectives of the dam removal complete? Yes. As far as contract, the contract that was the city was under with that dam removal project, dam removal has been completed, restoration, the banks have been stabilized, all those pieces of the contract are complete. In the eyes of the implementation team, again, not leaving in the rearview mirror, we have $200,000 to spend this year placing wood in stream. You ask, you're going to get the real ecologist answer. It's going to be 40 or 50 years before we have a tree that grows up large enough to fall in that river, to shade that river. Those are all concerns of the folks that are really sold on the ecological benefits of this project. And because of that, there are funds in a variety of places that allow us to use these funds for river restoration. And these are funds that don't come directly out of our taxpayer pockets, even though they all do. If they're not spent here, they'll be spent somewhere else. So if you'd rather that those are other options to spend, let taxpayers' monies be spent in other places, or we can take those restoration dollars and have them spent in your backyard improving the resource that we all know and love.
Yeah, you had mentioned that the banks have been restored. Are you talking just right where the dam was actually removed, or are you talking?
Just 2.8 miles of new river in that section. Conservation District and partners, Grand Traverse Band, Fry Foundation, Trout Unlimited has planted upwards of 4,000 trees and shrubs. There's plans to plant another 6,000 to 8,000 trees there in the next 2 years. And then there's also that $200,000 for woody debris habitat in stream for basically for the fish communities described.
I just look at projects a little bit different in that, and I'll take a project that's being it's under the microscope, the Myers project out to Acme. When that's done, everything will be stabilized. And I'm just curious, on the river, are we, as a county, are we responsible to see that those banks are stabilized on a timeline? Or do we get 50 years for that to stabilize, as it moves forward? This question, I look at it, I seen the slides that Mr. Downer put up there, and it looks pretty sparse on the riverbanks.
It is, and that's certainly why the funding efforts are underway to continue planting in that area.
And so will we have funding available for the miles of river that I'm assuming we're going to be creating the same issues, same problems? Are those fundings going to be coming down the pike where we can see that those are all taken care of? Because it kind of looks to me like instead of a couple miles of bad riverbanks, we're liable to see an additional 3 miles.
Out of that 2.9 miles, 2.8 miles in the Brown Bridge area, I invite the entire boards, commissions, everyone here to go out to the site and have a look. That 2.8 miles, the banks in that 2.8 miles are virtually stable at this point. The slides that Mr. Downer showed are above the project area. There's about a quarter mile of riverbank in there that are still adjusting. There are plans and fundraising efforts in place to continue the restoration process on those lands. As far as your question regarding management of those banks, the soil erosion control component and permit has been satisfied as a result of the Brown Bridge Dam project. That is closed.
What agency signs off on that? Is it the DEQ or for the riverbanks being stable and that we've satisfied that permit?
I think it would be soil erosion control folks are usually the folks on the ground that are reviewing site conditions, and if they have any concerns, bring them back to the permittees or the folks that are contracted to do the work.
Okay, so there would have been a soil erosion permit pulled for that project?
There was a soil erosion permit pulled for the project.
That would have been for that, the river area that Mr. Downer was concerned about.
Correct. Actually, the area that Mr. Downer showed photographs of was above the project, so
it would have been backwaters, I'm sure, where it would have where once the waters receded, it opened up a riverbank
above the defined project as when you open up a project, there are all these pieces that go along with it. The design of that project was 13,300 feet. That's the definition of that project area. So those banks that Mr. Downer took those photos of are just above the project area. It is where the river is naturally adjusting, where the banks were not stabilized as part of the project.
So do you think we might have that same issue when we remove the Boardman Lake Dam?
I think,
or have we gone upstream far enough this time that we're going to establish the top of the project, the limit?
My opinion is that in the Boardman situation, we already have a river that is adjusting because of a drawdown, the 16-foot drawdown that's been occurring. The river's been moving back and forth, self-adjusting. What happens? That river moves back and forth and it builds its own floodplain. That's happening now. The design, as I understand it, for Boardman would excavate an area of relic river channel in the same way that it was done at Brown Bridge, with a floodplain adjacent to that river channel and planting on that floodplain to try to control that bank erosion.
Are we responsible to go upstream in those areas where Mr. Downer was shown and get those stabilized? Because they obviously they look bare. And I'm just asking the question because we're looking to open up another one, and that one looks how it appears on the slides. And I want to know that I want to know if we're going to be, what our exposure is.
Sure.
You know, as a contractor, I know what my exposure would be. I'd be drug up there to take care of it. But as river restorers, have we got 40, 50 years?
Commissioner Klaus, may I'm just going to make a suggestion, for whatever it's worth. Perhaps you could get together with Frank after the meeting, and Frank can arrange a trip for you to go look. Really?
Trip up the river?
Yeah, a trip up the river. Send you up the river, Commissioner Klaus. And take a look, and if you've got some soil erosion questions, involve Bruce Ramey. All right? Commissioner Crawford.
Okay. I guess my first question would be for Carl. The $2 million of current investment, that's money the Corps has already spent?
That's correct.
And what was that spent on?
That was spent over the last 10 years on all of our involvement in the project, including preparation of the detailed feasibility study, the environmental assessment, and all the river modeling, sediment management studies, all the work that we've done in that detailed study.
So does any of that, does that overlap the money that Kim said was spent on the design? Have you simultaneously been trying to design this project separately from?
No, well, our study included, when we prepare a feasibility study, that study does not include detailed design. That includes a conceptual level design where we can, to a point where we feel we can accurately depict a good cost estimate for the overall project. Subsequent, and I believe they started a concurrent to us completing our study, the IT, through I believe it was a contract with the county and with the Grand Traverse Band, hired AECom to prepare the detailed design work for the Boardman Dam removal project.
So the Army Corps will follow that design that's already been completed?
That's our intention, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Krupa, you were next.
Is the powerhouse part of the quote for the Sabin Dam powerhouse removal as well?
At this point, the costs in there include those costs,
It includes the powerhouse for both Boardman and Sabin. And the $5.7 million cost for the Brown Bridge removal, was 35% of that paid in local matches?
Are you asking me that
Carl
question?
wouldn't know.
Well, yeah, the Corps wasn't involved in the Brown Bridge removal.
Somebody
so,
here
yeah, so.
has to know numbers, right?
So the $5.7 million, that included the following. $1,349,000 from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. $1 million from the Great Lakes Fishery Trust. $80,000 from DEQ, EPA Section 319 Restoration Program. $1,150,000 from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation through Sustain Our Great Lakes. $25,000 from the Olson Foundation. $533,000 from EPA through the GLRI. $1,091,000 from Fish and Wildlife Service through what they call the Great Lakes Fish and Wildlife Restoration Act. And then another $500,000 from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through the National Fish Passage and Great Lakes Basin Partnership. The county and the city have contributed $20,000 a year, and maybe my director can help me, for the last 5 years now. Plus there was an additional $50,000 contribution, is that right, Amy, from the city and or county in the early stages? Yeah, and those costs have gone to help to pay for project management over the last 4 to 5 years, and we've been grateful for that. But honestly, the bulk of the financial responsibility has lied with federal funders, tribal, and Great Lakes Fishery Trust as well.
How come the federal funders there didn't require a 35% match?
I'd have to go back through the grant reports. Likely it's often a 20 to 25% required match. And, you know, with the Great Lakes Fishery Trust having private non-federal funds, the tribe having tribal, those are able to match federal dollars. And in addition, if I remember correctly, maybe you can help me, the Garfield Township did some land protection work in the Boardman watershed, and some of that was used as in-kind match for these federal grants. So it's, I mean, the take-home from that list is that this isn't just a county project, a watershed project, a city project, a Michigan project. It is a Great Lakes project that has the attention of so many heavy hitters. I mean, we're in the spotlight right now, you know. So, I mean, I look at this slide that Carl has put together, and the federal column is $12 million for the next 3 sites. That's what they're offering. It's quite significant.
But if we accept the $8 million, then we have to have a letter of intent stating that we agree to remove, and I'm speaking for the county since we're the owners of the Sabin Dam, we agree to remove the Sabin Dam. That's part of the deal. You don't get the $8 million, because $8 million would pay off.
We need Carl back up here
The
for this
$8 million
one.
would pay off the Boardman Dam. I mean, it would be done. But you're saying that in order to get the 8 million, we have to do the Sabin Dam, and we have to do the 35% match as well to that. I mean, we can't just say, you know, we're not interested in the Sabin Dam, we'd like the $8 million. I mean, that's what you're saying, right? We have to make the scope of the project relies upon the acceptance of the $8 million grant. Those are the strings.
Yeah. We are looking for, as I mentioned, a letter of intent, okay? Until you sign that project partnership agreement, which is the fourth bullet on that slide, you wouldn't be under a financial commitment, legally. But, it's certainly, as I mentioned earlier, the expectation that we operate in good faith.
And going back to the letter of intent, I'm sorry to interrupt because I know you had the floor. The timeline for the letter of intent, we, city and the county, have both expressed an interest in getting some better numbers. What is a timeline for the letter of intent that you're looking for? And again, I want to ask the same question because I'm not clear on whether you need a letter of intent from both parties. I know you would like a letter of intent from both parties, but do you need a letter of intent from both parties? The owners of the dams.
I would suggest that if we have a letter of intent that addresses completion of the project, whether it be from one or both, then that would be sufficient.
Okay, that answers my question because I'm pretty sure you're including the city and the renovation of the Union Street Dam. That's what I'm hearing. Mr. Showman.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, from Grand Traverse Band, I'd like to thank the Chair, Max Bauer, and the City County Commissioners for inviting us, Mayor Estes and the City Commissioners for inviting us to sit in with you today. I think it's a good opportunity to meet and greet, and also to talk about this issue when we're looking at this issue and just to give you a little perspective on what the tribe feels and our involvement, that we hope to continue with this involvement. We hope that this project moves forward. I think when you look at our perspective, we look at the dams as breaking the river. The river was there for thousands of years. Our families, our ancestors drank from that river. We didn't have to boil the water, we just drank from it. And it's a spiritual and a cultural thing for us. When you look at this project, it's restoring our mother back to her natural state. And while we really understand the concerns of people that have been here for 40 or 50 years, my family's been here for thousands of years. And Councilor Wilson, his family's been here for thousands of years. And the river was damaged by putting dams on it. And those were needs for electricity. Those were, they filled a need at the time, but they've been broke for 100 years. So it's not going to be fixed in 6 months or a year or 5 years. It's going to take a long period of time to restore our mother to her natural state. And we really applaud the political conviction that it took for this body to move forward in that initial step for that. And we really hope that it will continue. I think the tribe is looking at, we're looking at trying to secure other funds that will lower that number. Okay, if a BAA money comes in, then and the Corps doesn't have to spend as much, then that lowers that 35% number. And there's other ways we can help also. We're very committed to this project, and I think that when we talk to our staff, and we're very proud that Frank is the chairman of the IT. We promoted that. We're not going to pull the plug on that. We have a vested interest. Our teachings tell us that we're supposed to look at 7 generations, and that's the way we look at these things. And I thought, sitting here, I thought about the 7 generations ago when my family was bathing and drinking in that water, and then the way it flowed. And you look at those pictures from 100 years ago, that's the way it's supposed to look, not the way it looks now. And I'm hoping that 7 generations from my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be able to see the river restored to its natural state and be able to enjoy those waters the way they're supposed to be. So, you know, I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to our perspective. And again, I want to thank everybody for inviting us. And we hope to continue this dialogue. So that's all I had to say at this time. Appreciate your time.
Yes,
just
Commissioner
real quickly,
Howe.
I haven't weighed in, but I don't have any questions, Frank, sorry. No, I mean, as a commissioner, I've been a city commissioner for 2 years. I've inherited a lot of processes and projects, none of which have had the transparency and the due diligence that I think this project had. So although I understand the scrutiny of it, I just take a moment to commend the project to this point. I wish every project that I inherited was this well thought out and and funded. Because what I'm looking at that slide right there, as a city commissioner, I'm ready to sign a letter of intent moving forward in terms of these steps. As terms of the funding, I'm looking, because of the $8 million, you're looking at a non-federal match of 18%, governmental match being far less than that once we have grants and other things that come into play. So, you know, even at 18%, that's a huge that's a windfall coming into the community for what is essentially a local project, even though it has wider implications. So I think, you know, certainly let's get the better numbers, but I'm prepared to move forward in terms of these steps that we have before us, learning each step, obviously.
I would like to try to wrap it up, so I'm going to go around this way one more time. Council Member Showman, thank you so much. Council Member Wilson, do you have anything you would like to add?
I'd just like to consider the economic impact that this project would have on the community and how many of these dollars are going to jobs. I heard jobs mentioned tonight, and I would like to see actually numbers on how many jobs have been created from this project and any type of projection that shows how much of that's going to funnel back to the greater community.
Commissioner Werner, anything?
Yeah, just as far for my fellow city commissioners and the mayor, yeah, generally I'm quite supportive of moving this forward.
Commissioner Richardson, anything?
Well, I think John Nelson commented that Commissioners Wheelock and you, Commissioner Max Bauer, were in that vote in April of '09. Well, so was I. I was a county commissioner then. I voted for it, and I will echo Gary. I'm certainly ready to sign a letter of intent. If $2 million is at this point appears to be the most we have to spend collectively, and there's already some of that is already dealt with, and it isn't really that much money. But mostly, getting this project done is the right thing to do. I agree with Mr. Wilson that this will have huge. It not only has an immediate economic benefit, it will have a huge long-term economic benefit as well.
Commissioner Howe, Commissioner Carruthers.
I thank you for the presentation. Thank you for clarifying the information. Thank you for the support in funding coming from the feds. I was not a supporter of this project in the beginning, but that train's left the station. We've removed one of our dams, and we're prepared to start studying our other dam to be removed. I hope the county will also move forward with a letter of intent and join us with supporting this project. It's turning out to be a lot less money than I thought it would be coming out of our coffers, so I'm ready to also support the letter of intent and move this project forward.
Mayor Pro Tem Boudreaux.
I just have to ditto what everybody else has said.
Mr. Colburn.
Yes, staff will continue to work in terms of diligently looking and working with the IT committee on additional funds, but also want to reiterate the safeguards that, for instance, we put in terms of the risk management side to protect all interests as well as we proceed forward.
Mayor Estes, anything?
I'd like to thank the Army Corps. This is a godsend coming to the city and the county for $2 million that we have to raise locally from various sources. We get $12 million of economic stimulus to the community. This is a great deal. Yeah, and I'm ready to sign any letter.
Dr. Lathrop.
I want some harder numbers, but I am very impressed with what you said about 1,000 years, and I've been saying this to people, that this river restoration will exist for 1,000 years. Not just our grandchildren, but way beyond that. But we still have to be responsible to the people that pay the taxes. And I want to be able to look them in the face and say, we provided for it in our budget. In order to provide for it in our budget, we have to have some type of numbers. And that's all I'm asking for.
Commissioner Kropa.
I'm going to echo what Dan said. I jotted down some words when asking about numbers. Words used like interesting, it's a possibility, conceivably, expectation. We can't build a budget on conceivable expectations. The county is in a severe deficit situation. In the next month, you will see our county board come forward out of our strategic plan asking the citizens to lose and or lower their level of services from the county. We will be asking our employees to take concessions in their benefits and their pay. And I can't, in good conscience, regardless of how wonderful the project is, commit $1 by my vote to adding to our structural deficit or unfunded liabilities. And unfortunately, this project falls in that. So I won't be moving forward supporting it, but I do appreciate the work. I think the work started at a time when our county was not in the situation it is in now. And it's not right to ask people to lose their job or to lower their services for a dam that doesn't need to be removed. And that would be the Sabin. If this project included a proposal that didn't involve a tied implication to the Sabin, I would consider it, but I think that was pretty clear tonight, so I can't move forward in good conscience to ask anyone to lose $1 out of their pay for a dam that doesn't need to be removed.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, the thing, that comes out of this meeting tonight that I see is this commitment was made in 2009 to move forward with this project. I think we need to uphold that commitment. I think it's important to our community to uphold that commitment. But the really glaring fact that kind of came out to me when Kim was reading the numbers, this is a project that we've already received and spent $5.7 million for. It's a project that's going to cost another $10 to $12 million, or $12 to $15 million additional funding. So far, Grand Traverse County has committed $150,000 to that fund. Now, what project can we have that amounts to nearly $20 million to benefit our community that the County Board of Commissioners has only committed $150,000 to? I will sign the letter of commitment, the letter of commitment, because we absolutely need to move forward with this. It is a huge asset to our community long term. 100 years, 1,000 years, like Tom said. This is an improvement to our community that's going to last forever. And thus far, Grand Traverse County has committed $150,000 of money. We have a multi-million-dollar budget every year. And we have a lot of discretionary funds. We have contingency funds. We have all different kinds of things. But we will not have another project that's going to affect this community for 1,000 years that's going to come before us during this budget cycle. And all we're asking is a commitment by this board to continue to move forward with the project.
Commissioner Klaus, any thoughts?
We do have a multi-million-dollar budget that our unfunded liabilities well exceeds our budget. I have a tough time going ahead with it if we do have to actually remove a dam that doesn't need to be removed, which would be the Sabin Dam. And other than that, I probably said enough earlier.
Commissioner Crawford.
I think this project is well on its way, and I'm not interested in breaking promises that this county board made previously. I do think, though, that we need good numbers. We need to know. If we can't budget for something we don't know. So while I understand that some things are in conception phases and we're not sure of exact numbers, there are things we can be reasonably sure of right now. And that is, where some of the money came from. Can it be used for that local match? We need those numbers. We need just a better number. I don't mind budgeting for the numbers, but I got to know what they are. So I'll turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, thank everyone for coming, and it was a great presentation. Kind of like the rest of my county commissioners, we know we're in a major financial situation coming up in the next few years. Something to remember is, we won't be spending this all in 1 year, so we will be setting that aside. As long as we got a good placemaker in there for it, we can try to look at it. We are going to have some tough decisions to make on this board here soon. I am very impressed with the people that have stepped up and have provided money. My hope is we can get more of that to come in and reduce our part of this. But I also, like Mr. Carruthers, believe this train's already left the station. So again, I'm grateful, though, for the money that has been raised for it. And I would ask if you could go back and see if any of the donors that have donated for the Boardman, if you could repurpose that for Sabin. So.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank the City Commission, the Grand Traverse Band. This is our first joint meeting, and I sincerely hope it's not our last, as we work together to improve our community. And I would like to see more collaboration between the city and the county as well, moving forward on a number of issues. And as Mr. Colburn knows, the Traverse City Senior Center lease is coming up, and that requires a joint meeting, according to the contract, with the city and the county. According to the contract. Okay, Frank, do you want to have any closing comments? And by the way, Carl, before you leave, if you would be so kind as to give county commissioners and city commissioners and the Grand Traverse Band your card, if you have it. I would like everyone to have an opportunity, if they have not had an opportunity, to ask questions, or if they think of additional questions later, I would like them to be able to email you their questions and give them that opportunity. Would you do that, Carl?
That slide, I think it was on that first.
Oh, was it? I'm not wearing glasses.
I don't know if I have my email on there or not.
But if you, thank you, Carl. Frank, if you would like to wrap it up.
Sure. I did want to address the quick question about how, if funds can be moved around for specific grants. While there are many pieces to this, the one piece that I help manage is the BIA funds. Those BIA funds were written for the entire project, and they do have flexibility within the project to be moved. Thanks, Kim and Carl, and thanks to the commissioners and miigwech, to our tribal counselors, for the questions and comments. We owe a tremendous amount of gratitude to the Army Corps of Engineers, especially Carr, whose long-standing commitment to this project and for his extraordinary efforts in pursuing this new source of funding. The project has reached a major milestone. The IT has been working diligently to implement this community's decision to remove the dams and restore the Boardman Ottaway River. That decision has been endorsed by the three governments represented tonight at this board. You charged us with the task, and we're delivering. You helped us get to where we are today, and you've expended significant public resources in doing so. Tonight, you've learned about a monumental funding commitment that significantly reduces the local, non-federal share and allows you to finish the job right. It's a rare situation, and one that communities across the country would envy. Why? Because this project and the partnership is recognized for its unparalleled collaboration and invaluable ecological and community benefits. The first step in realizing this offer is to renew your unwavering 100% commitment to this project as envisioned by this community. We're asking you to join in with the team for the local share. Rephrase that. We're asking you to join with the team for the local share, and that's a big ask. But you've been presented with a manageable expense that could be spread over multiple budget cycles, and you won't be alone. We're still in this with you. With your renewed commitment, the implementation team's fundraising efforts will be complemented by a new private funding effort led by Rotary Charities and the Olson Foundation and others. This campaign will be aimed at support for the entire Boardman River watershed, beginning with the highest priority component, dam removal. All of us on the IT have budgets. We understand budget pressures, but in our view, this is the best possible scenario. It minimizes your cost, compresses the time frame, resolves current and future safety and maintenance issues, and it allows you to leverage major funds, $14 million of them outside of your budget, including $2.5 million already raised for dam removal, plus 65% of the cost of the remaining two dams, Sabin and Union Street. This is your moment to do something great and will benefit our generations and generations to follow. We've heard you talk about this. Something that will have permanent positive impacts on the river, bay, and water resources that we as a community treasure so dearly. It will never be any easier than this. Please don't let the opportunity pass you by. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. And please note, everyone, that the Grand Traverse County Commission still has some business that they need to take care of. We are going to have a discussion regarding our administrator contract, and then, of course, at the end of our meeting, we have a second opportunity for public comment. However, I would like to take about a 2-minute recess to excuse city commissioners and the Grand Traverse Band and members of the public who may wish to leave right now. So we'll take about a 2-minute recess, and then we will come back and finish our business.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just closed everything.
same area, because we walked that about a second.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have had more than 2 minutes here.
Hello.
We've had a lot more than 10. Yeah, thank you. Warn me. Thank you, Bob.
All my military training.
Wow.
Hey, can one of you guys find?
What is, he's wearing a yellow, he's wearing a yellow sweater.
Look for.
He might be.
I mean, he might be someplace I can't look.
That's what we mean.
Yes. Take the time.
I read most of it.
What do you mean for?
They want to take a minute to read.
Oh, I've read it.
Believe me, I've read it like 5 times. I've read it, several drafts of it. Commissioner Kropa, if you could wheel yourself back to your table.
We were discussing dance. Very, very
Tap.
important. Kids' sports, yes.
Okay, I am reconvening the meeting, and our next order of business is the administrator contract. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to read it, so if you would like a minute to read it, please let me know. I will highlight some of the items. The term of the agreement is October 8th, which is tomorrow, to December 31st of 2018. The administrator, Mr. Menzel, will serve at the pleasure of the Grand Traverse County Board. In the event that the administrator is terminated, Mr. Menzel has requested 3 months of severance. That 3 months of severance he would like to be donated to the Irv and Emmeline Menzel Memorial Scholarship Fund at the Community Foundation. That scholarship fund is given to Central High School students who are going into the field of education. So unlike the last administrator contract, this is 3 months. And this is, the money would go into the community. Let's see. There is, if in the event the administrator voluntarily resigns, the administrator, Mr. Menzel, would give the employer approximately would give the employer at least 45 days written notice. In the event the administrator intends to retire, he would he would give us 90 days notice. Yeah.
Retire a couple of times.
The administrator's salary, he has requested $1 a month through February 15th of next year. After February 16th, moving forward, he's requesting an annual salary of $92,500. He is requesting 4 weeks of vacation, holidays. He is requesting, I'm summarizing this, so please take your time and read it as I go. He is requesting $100 a month towards his cell phone bill. We have offered him a cell phone, but Mr. Menzel has said that he really doesn't want to carry 2 phones. So he's asked in lieu of a county cell phone that we contribute $100 towards his on a monthly basis. And he has requested $500 per month for a car allowance. He does not necessarily wish to track his mileage. Because as many meetings as he's going to be going to, that would probably take up a better part of his day.
I can tell you it's about 20 miles round trip from your house to here.
As to the extent permitted by law, we would indemnify the administrator.
There's a typo in that paragraph, too.
All righty.
Line 3, end of the sentence, just needs to be the word "or," I believe. Actual or threatened, legal action,
Yes.
actual or threatened.
Actual or. That is correct. Let's see if there's anything else that I should highlight.
I also noted on the salary change, it's upon receipt of satisfactory performance evaluation by the County Board of Commissioners.
Yes. He's not asking for a specific increase.
We currently review the administrator once a year.
Yes.
Is that at the end of the year? Having not been through it yet, I'm just asking.
Yes, usually. It really depends. Well, it has depended. With Dennis Aloya, it was at the end of the year. With Mr. Benda, it was usually, if memory serves me, and it might not serve me correctly, it was a year after his.
Okay.
He had a chance to
Yeah, because we wouldn't
work.
want to review him in December, say. 'Cause
No.
I think Dave's last one was in December, and then again in February.
Yeah, no. So, are there any questions for Mr. Menzel, for legal counsel, Commissioner Wheelock?
You know, obviously, it's a pretty straightforward contract. My one question is regard to the October 8th start date. I know when we talked last time, you said that you were still at Beta and you were committed to there till the end of the year. You'd be available to start part-time at Grand Traverse County as your time permitted to try to dual role. I'm just wondering, do we have a projected start date full-time here yet?
Yes, in an ad hoc committee today with Dr. Lathrop was there, we agreed that November 16th would be my final day at Beta, unless they were going to look for an interim executive director, because they're starting a 16-month recruiting and selection process, and I said if you can't find anybody as an interim director, I would stay through December, but I don't think that'll be a problem. So November 16th is the target date for that.
Commissioner Wheelock, one of the reasons we chose, myself, Mr. Menzel, and Paula Segala in our discussions October 8th was because there are decisions, we want to give Mr. Menzel authority to begin making decisions immediately. We are, as you know, in the process of looking for an HR director. We would like Mr. Menzel's input as to who he believes would be a good choice for HR director. And we would also like his input regarding a new facilities director. There are other staffing openings that will require, I think, his...
And I have no problem with that. We discussed that as part of the strategic planning session last Saturday, that we needed, if Tom was coming, we needed his involvement in some of these issues. I just wondered, what the particular date was.
Well, I wasn't able to give that to you until we had that meeting with the ad hoc committee, and what they will do is they will recommend November 16th to the board on October 28th. They can't guarantee that, but they can do it as a recommending body to the full Beta board, which they will do on October 28th.
Okay.
All right.
If I may,
Certainly.
I wanted to answer Commissioner Kropa's. The evaluation I felt would be fair. I know that it's pretty early, but making $1 a month up to that February date, if you're not happy with my performance, it just gives you another opportunity to get rid of me for nothing.
Well, I actually really liked that part of the contract. I just wanted to make sure we weren't double reviewing you in December and then February.
I just wanted to be very fair, to do it that way.
I will let you know if I am not happy with anything.
Yeah.
She's so reticent.
I called your IT department and asked them what they were paying per person per phone, and that's where that number came up. It was 90, and Paula suggested it's 100 even. The car allowance I think you gave to the previous administrator, and I have a car that's 15 years old and 187,000 miles, so I don't know if it's going to go 20 more, so I might be getting another one before it's over. And the hospitalization is you will save money on that because you're spending
a lot more.
$900 to $1,000 a month, and so that's what I pay for Medicare, advantage of being older, and my supplemental. That's just what I pay for it, and so I just would pass that on, but it's still far cheaper than you would pay a person monthly for that. So that was why that took place.
Well, I did want to be clear, just if we have acceptance of this contract, that we're not going to be discussing year-end evaluation review, because we already have one built into this contract in February.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, if you look at Section D there, or D in Section 4, it's going to fall upon us, which hopefully will not be an issue, that we make sure we give Mr. Menzel some goals and performance objectives and all
Yes.
that. And I don't think that's going to be an issue with this board and the direction we're going moving forward, but we need to realize that he's only going to be as good as the direction we can give him also. So we need to constantly be aware of that too. So.
That, Commissioner, was why I wanted the, 2 hours I spent with you was to find out where your philosophy was, if it was in alignment, and if we agreed on the priorities of what needs to be done in the short term. And I have to admit, and everyone that I talked to, we're very much in alignment. But I agree, it would be nice to have something laid out in clear direction, so you can say that at the end of 12 months, yes, he successfully completed those, or he didn't, and so I agree with that.
Any other questions? Commissioner Crawford?
Tom, when we had met, you had mentioned that you do work remotely at times, and you would like either an iPad or a laptop. Does that need to be part of this, or no?
Well, I think everyone has one. I have an iPad with Beta, but I have to give it back. Okay. When I go on vacation, it's usually to visit my wife, who's in Arizona. about a 3-hour time difference, so I'm up with Beta, I'm up at 6 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock here, and I usually work 2.5 hours with staff before. And I would do the same thing. I work off-site all the time. So even though if I'm gone for a week, I'm in contact every day with whoever I was appointed as the acting director while I'm gone, or the staff members. So projects are started, and I may want to follow up on specific action steps and tactics, and so I can do that off-site. And so I do use the iPads.
But does that need to be?
And I also, my cell phone,
No? Okay.
my cell phone.
We'll give him one.
Okay.
What I had suggested, my cell phone would be integrated into the system that you have.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Lathrop.
I'm hoping we'll do this because that means tomorrow we have a captain of our ship, and I think it will really improve all of our morale in this county, so we have positive efforts going forward, and we've got someone that can actually take over this and do this job. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Will you make a motion?
I'd love to. I make the motion that we do sign this contract with Mr. Tom Menzel and ask him to be our administrator for the next 3 years.
Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Klaus. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Mr. Menzel, if you would sign a contract with Bonnie Shealy before you, you already have?
If this is for immediate effect, should we do a roll call?
This is a
vote?
full board meeting.
I know, but we should do a roll call.
All righty.
Well,
If you would like, I'm more than happy to do a roll
board
call.
meeting.
We're fine. It was posted as a Board of Commissioners meeting, not a committee meeting, so we're good.
We're good. Okay. Commissioner Kropa.
Just in reference to the email chain, I know that everybody here wasn't privy to the email chain today with Bonnie and Paula and Christine Kramer.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I am going to add onto the RMNA agenda a week from tonight to discuss appointing Tom to different boards that our administrator has typically served on. And we will do that in conjunction with his schedule, which I'm sure he'll have a better idea of a week from now. But I do, I'm sure Dean is excited to welcome Tom to the Brownfield Authority in his place.
Now, please understand that initially, Mr. Menzel has commitments, and he may choose to designate a staff member to sit on these boards in lieu of his presence, because he does, and he's made it very clear, he does presently have some commitments.
I'd like to just add that we add a discussion about it.
That would be
Tom will have a
fine.
better idea of his schedule and commitments, and we can at least have an idea of where we're going, since we are looking at year-end appointments to boards and committees.
And by the way, Dean loves Brownfield, so.
I have been getting 6 and 7 calls a day, as Chris knows, for county issues, and I said, I'm not here yet. But again, Commissioner Johnson, it would be really helpful if you'd say, Tom, we need you to work on budget issues and union negotiations and that kind of thing. Then I can really get focused, and I can prioritize my time here and also with Beta.
I'm pretty sure that the board will give you direction right now to work on budget issues and labor negotiations.
I thought that was fairly safe.
I think those
in
are
addition
your
to the personal
top
growth
priorities out of the
opportunities you were
gate.
providing me along with that.
All right.
And I've learned a long time ago to limit the personal growth opportunities if you can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support and your
aboard.
vote of confidence, and I very much look forward to working with all of you to help our community get a lot better in a lot of areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is our second opportunity for public comment. Mr. Gilman.
Congratulating Tom, but frankly, I think I should be congratulating the board. I mean, this is like winning the lottery as far as I'm concerned. You've got a lot of talent, somebody who's prepared for this community in ways that no other hire could be. So good for you, and I think you did right. I'd like to just kind of close up. I know there were a lot of things said, and there was a lot of commentary during the discussion on the dams. I just want to wrap this up. I got a couple of last thoughts. When somebody talks about promises that were made, and we've made a promise to continue and go forward with the project, okay, that's all well and fine if the information was actually true, that the promises were predicated on. So I think it's important that we accurately assess what was told to the people in 2005, what the promises were. I also encourage, if all of you have not yet had a chance to look at the estimates for the repairs and the destruction of the dams prior to any of it happening, by the engineering reports and basically the quotes, and I gave that information to the chairwoman. It's been available the entire time, and if you look at it, it never really made any sense why the dams were slated for removal in the first place. As for the input from the tribe, as far as the 1,000-year plan goes, look, 7 generations, okay, but here's the thing. If we take all of what he said to its natural conclusion, we might as well pack up our bags, leave the streets, and let them crush the roads. Take the buildings down and grow trees, because that's you know, things change. We grow up as a civilization. We expand. That's the facts. And it may sound politically incorrect, but I think that that's something that they're going to have to deal with at some point here. In terms of the funding, you guys heard it. All the funding that came for the Brown Bridge removal was from outside sources. I mean, most all of it was. What does that tell you? It tells you there wasn't enough interest from inside our community to do the very same thing, but only upon the bribery from federal, and in multiple cases federal, because some of it came from the tribe, which also came from the federal government, which we all pay. There's no free lunch on this. So I think it's important that we recognize that. And I do want to point out that Carl Platts was careful enough to dance around the issues and the questions. You can take anything you want from what he said. Okay? You can come up with your own conclusions, and it may or may not be right. But he never once really laid it down firmly for you to get a good grasp on what is being promised here. I just want you to recognize that. You know, we can walk away, you know, the commissioners can walk away thinking that they heard one thing, but it may not have been what was really said. So I just wanted to point that out. I appreciate the discussion and the time that you guys have spent on this issue. And I know it's not easy, and I know it's not easy to stop a train once it's rolling down the tracks. But I think this is one of those times where we have to, because the tracks are out up ahead. And I just don't want to go there with this county. That's all. Thanks.
Mr. Tutlis?
Norbert Tutlis, still my name, 4565 Buckhorn Drive, still where I live. I was against Tom Menzel before I knew him, and now I'm for him. Good job. I think a reasonable person would look both ways before crossing the street. Now, if you agree with that, except for a one-way street, when the whole process began, when I got involved with the dam process, it changed from the future of the dams to the fate of the dams. And those two words were a turning point for me. I said, whoa, wait a minute, we're not looking positively. And then I looked at the implementation team. The implementation team did not have one voting member who was for saving the dams. The implementation team denied that there was any money for restoration. I came up with 7 sites that made grants for dam restoration. We never heard that. Charles Peterson and I tried to get on the implementation team or have riverfront property owners that have skin in the game. No. Not even as ad hoc members. They're accepting no new members. During the time I was involved with it, the head of the implementation team was an intervener. They were not an original party. That was the DNR. They steered the whole committee, and as someone before me said, all the money's from outside. I mean, why are we letting outsiders tell us what we should be doing with our dams? And to that point, we effectively let Traverse City steal the kitty, and they're removing their dam. We're left with ours. They used $5.7 million of money that was raised for dam removal and removed theirs. We got ours left. If I was sitting on their commission, I'd have signed before I left anything you want, because we're off the hook. We got one of our dams removed. We got our other one. You're going to rebuild it. Almost $2 million. In 2008, STS also said Union Street Dam is bad and needs $675,000 worth of repairs now. 2008. 7 years later, I guess it's not so bad. If you look at dams with potential hazard, it's Union Street. But our ancestors said, keep Union Street, keep the culverts, keep the roads. I think it's flawed. I think we need to go back and review, can the dams make us money? Can the dams make us enough money to fund their removal at some point in time? And they can. And if given a chance, you would find that Charles Peterson would be able to do that. Thank you. I know I went over.
No, you didn't.
Oh, well,
Thank you.
in that case.
Any additional public comment? Seeing none, I thank you all very much. We are adjourned.
I need you.
I will sign right now.
I'm gonna-